Hi there, welcome. Thanks for being here today. My name is Elaine Loh, and I am a teacher with Manhattan Prep. You can see on the screen today that we're going to be doing the Verbal Master Mindset. And this is something that's near and dear to my heart because I work separately from Manhattan Prep as an actor and a writer. And while I love that job as well, it's sometimes tough in the entertainment industry to be constantly employed. So I work for Manhattan Prep in a job that I also love, which is teaching. And so words and how we communicate are very important to me for both of these jobs. So that's why I wanted to teach this today. So we're going to be going through some tips and tricks in terms of how you should be approaching this test on the verbal side and the things that we need to think about. So I'm going to jump straight in. And by the way, I see some people commenting, and I really appreciate your participation and letting us know where you're from. I also will be asking some questions during class and letting you comment the answers and stuff like that. So the more that you participate, probably the more you'll get out of it. All right. So let's jump into it. And here we go. All right. So the verbal section, I'm just going to do a brief overview because some of you may not have even taken the test yet. If you've taken a practice test, this will be familiar to you. We have 36 problems in 65 minutes. By the way, if you see me looking up, that's my second screen where I'm sharing this from. So that you might just notice that as I present. So we have 3 different sections on the verbal section. We have sentence correction, and you can see 12 to 13 problems. We're going to aim for a minute 20 average. And that's what I'll be giving you in class today in this presentation when we do practice problems. With reading comprehension, you can expect 3 to 4 passages, usually 4. We think of it as a 2 to 3 minute read and understand, and then you'll have 12 to 14 problems total, broken up by passage. And we aim for a minute 30 per problem average, as you can see there. And then we have critical reasoning, which are 9 to 10 problems and a 2-minute average. Now, notice that I'm talking about average time. That doesn't mean that you sit there with a stopwatch yourself and do every problem on the GMAT concentrating on time. But when you're practicing by yourself, you actually should do that. You should get a sense of how long it takes you and how we can sometimes fall prey to like staying too long on a problem and trying to understand everything. And that's what a lot of today is about, of trying to tell you what you need to pay attention to, and then what can maybe go away a little bit. So I see a question: is this session for the beginners? This session is for everyone. I know that might sound a little strange, but honestly, whether you're a beginner or an advanced student, you need to do these same strategies in order to improve your score, whatever that score is. So here's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to start with sentence correction and talk about the process for doing that. And then we're going to move into how do you read for reading comprehension and critical reasoning. And the good part is it's kind of the same. There's a little bit of difference of what you have to do in order to understand, but it's pretty similar, so that's how you can get into the mindset of reading properly for this test. And then we're going to see the same slide a couple different times during this presentation, because it's going to be the emphasis of what to do when you get even the hardest verbal problem, how you can learn from that and improve your score. All right, so let's start with sentence correction. We will always see a sentence. Now, this is one Manhattan Prep made up. This is an easy sentence, or it's short compared to the GMAT. And it's important to note that some portion will be underlined, and maybe even the whole sentence will be underlined. And we're just giving you the structure of a question here, right? So you'll get your answers, And just so that you see on the side, you'll always replace the underlined portion. A will be the sentence as is. So you never actually really need to reread A because you've read it in the original sentence. B through E will be different, and they'll contain differences in at least one spot, at the beginning and at the end, sometimes in the middle. So just be aware that things can be moving around. Now, I'm just going to give you a quick second. Go ahead and do this one. This is just a practice, a little easy one, but go ahead and do that so that we can talk about what we're seeing here. I'll wait for a second and put your answer into the comments. All right. I'm starting to get some answers. Make a guess if you're not sure. One of the things that we're going to talk about in this presentation is how we go about answering this properly, in terms of process. That's what I'm going to talk you through. So, a lot of you are on the right answer. The right answer is D. D is the right answer. Carrots and beets. Carrots and beets are our subject. It is a plural subject. We need a plural noun to go with it in that case. So, carrots and beets grow is what we're looking for here. And then we have some other stuff at the end of the sentence that make a difference, in terms of better or best is a choice that we have to make. Since we're only talking about two different things, that's why we're going to choose better. And then we have to have parallel structure with cooler climates than warmer ones. Now, I kind of glossed over that answer choice because we're going to go into detail in official questions or real questions so that we can see the proper process for doing this. So let's talk about that. One thing to note before we get into process is about what this test is testing us on. It is testing us on correct grammar, but it is also testing us on clear meaning. And so these two things go hand in hand. That one way to think about it is that if you have good grammar, that promotes clear meaning, and vice versa. If you understand the meaning, you have to choose the good grammar. So these are the things that are tested. These are the things that we teach in our course in terms of the grammar. So I talked a little bit in that last question, subject verb agreement. We also saw parallel structure there. We also saw idioms, and the idioms are just like rules that this is what the English language does. And unfortunately, sometimes it's just a rule you have to know. Those other subject matters are things that we can grab onto in terms of strong rules about pronouns or modifiers. When I say modifiers, by the way, that means extra information in the sentence that helps modify what we're talking about, giving us description. All right. So let's continue on now. And here's a real question that we will then do together. So I will wait for a minute 20. So go ahead and try this one. Okay, I am coming back on. It's been about a minute 20. So, just so that you get to feel what that length of time feels like, I have some answers, not as many as last time. So, maybe you're still thinking. One of the things that I encourage my students to do is if they're not sure, make a guess. That's part of the mindset of taking this test is not getting bogged down in something that, like, you're really not sure what to do. But we're going to talk this through so that you know what to do. And I was talking about we're going to get into process. So, here we go. I'd highly advise you to take notes on what the process is. And if you have a question, go ahead and throw it into the comment section. I'd be happy to answer it for you. So let me move my slide along here. If you look at the top of this slide, it tells you the first step of the process. Our first step of the process is take a first glance. Great. I'm seeing more answers come in, by the way. Thank you. So take a first glance means you're not actually even going to read the sentence right away. I know that sounds crazy, but it's one of the things that you can do to prep your mind to know what is going to be coming in the sentence that you need to look at. So when I take a first glance here, one of the things that I notice is the beginning of the sentence is changing. We have this unlike, and many people. Now why am I looking at this? It makes me think when I see unlike, that means I have some sort of contrast or comparison here. And so my brain is prepped to look for parallel structure. That's what the first glance is supposed to do. You don't take too long. Don't read through every sentence. That's not a first glance. It's just like, what's happening here? The other things that I see in this first glance are that some of the words in the sentence move around. Like sometimes it's kind of in the middle, sometimes it's kind of at the end or in the front. That makes me think like, oh, something's going on here with either meaning or modification. Now, you might not think those things yet, but that is the goal of studying, is to prep your brain to get to that place where you automatically recognize what's being tested. So that's our first glance. It should take maybe 15 seconds at the most. All right. It's just a quick glance to say, what do I think is coming up? The second step is to read for meaning. All right. So if you're taking notes, please write down. Second step, read for meaning. So now we're going to read the sentence, but we're not going to pay too much attention to problems unless we really know what they are. And instead, we're going to try to understand, like, what is this sentence even trying to tell us? So when I read this sentence, I go, okay, unlike computer skills or other technical skills, there's a disinclination on the part of many people to recognize the degree to which their analytical skills are weak. So I understand they're trying to tell me that, like, people are willing to say they have bad computer skills or technical skills, but they're not really willing to recognize that their analytical skills are weak. That's what I understand from the meaning of the sentence. Now, sometimes it might be hard if the sentence is incorrect. Because as we said at the beginning, correct grammar promotes clear meaning. So if the grammar's wrong, it might be hard to understand that. And that's our job, is to try to parse through and figure out what they're trying to tell us. So third step, write it down. We pick a starting point. That means I'm not going to read each answer choice all the way through over and over. You know what? You ever do that thing where you're just like, read, and it doesn't actually help you. You have to then go back and read again. That's not what we want to do. That wastes time. And this test is all about making decisions, right? So I'm going to pick a starting point and think to myself, what did I see in my first glance and what did I get out of reading for meaning that lets me know where to start? Now, for me on this question, I like starting with the unlike, because I know unlike has a strong rule in terms of parallel structure. I have to be comparing or contrasting like things. So I'm going to look at these three first, and then I'll deal with D and E. So step 4 is to eliminate and then repeat the process. So what we mean by that is you've picked your starting place. We're starting with unlike, and we're going to go through and take off any answers that don't work. And then we're going to pick a new starting point. That's the repeat. Like with anything that we have left, we pick a new starting point and do the same thing. All right. So those are your 4 steps for sentence correction. This is how I approach every problem. This is how I teach it, but this is how I do it. I actually just took an official practice test a couple weeks ago because I hadn't done it at home yet, the online test, and I wanted to see what that felt like so that I could tell my students. So these are the exact skills that I use when I'm taking this test. Anyways, getting back to this problem, we have to compare, we have to check what we're comparing. So the first part of the sentence says, unlike computer skills or other technical skills, we can lump them all together. We're comparing skills with a disinclination. Wait a minute. Those aren't like things. So that doesn't seem like a very good answer. In B, we're comparing skills with many people. Wait a minute. That doesn't seem like a like thing. And in C, we're comparing skills with skills. Okay. So I know I'm going to get rid of A and B. And if you're having trouble sorting out like what's what, we can think about getting rid of in our minds, like crossing out the extra modification, the other stuff that we don't need. And that's why, for example, in B, when I look at which they admit they lack, I'm just going to say that that's extra modification and get to that point where I see many people. So if you're just wondering how I did that. So now that I'm in C and I go, I have some parallel structure here. I need to read the rest of the sentence and figure out, like, is the rest of it okay? So unlike the computer skills or other technical skills, analytical skills bring out a disinclination in many people to recognize that they are weak to a degree. Wow, this is a messy sentence. And for me, the mess comes a lot from meaning. So we were talking about grammar and meaning. Do the skills themselves bring out a disinclination in people? I would argue it's not the skills themselves that bring out a disinclination. It's that people have a disinclination to admit that they have these weak skills, analytical skills. And so for that reason, meaning-wise, I think this one is wrong too. Now, by the way, you can see at the bottom of the screen, it says keep track. I literally write down A, B, C, D, E every time, and I cross them out because I don't want to hold all this information in my head. So when I'm doing my work on my whiteboard or on my yellow pad that I get at the test center, I am writing this down and crossing them out. Some people write just little lines, like if you don't want to write the letters, whatever works for you. All right, so we said we're going to get rid of that one because the meaning is bad. There's also some other extra stuff at the end of the sentence that is questionable to me. But once you know something's wrong, you can get rid of it. So now we're going to pick our next starting point, and we don't really have much of a choice. It's both of them start with many people. And what we can do now is read through and see what we're dealing with. So many people, let's look at D, many people, and I'm gonna highlight a little bit. We have this comma ing here. Now, something that you'll learn in our class, but I'll give you right now, is that a comma ing can often be a modifier. And so we have to see, like, is this properly modifying these people? Yeah. Many people willing to admit that they lack computer skills or other technical skills. All right, that's proper modification. And so because it's proper modification, I'm actually going to not even read it anymore. I'm going to just take this out for a second and check my core sentence. Many people are disinclined to recognize that their analytical skills are weak. That sounds pretty good because we have a plural subject with a plural matching verb. So that sounds pretty good to me. I might leave it in right now. And then if we go to the next one, oops, sorry, I clicked ahead. You can see I'm crossing off E. Many people have a disinclination to recognize the weakness of their analytical skills while willing to admit their lack of computer skills or other technical skills. Oh, that is a pretty messy sentence. Now, you might say, wait, I feel like both of them are kind of okay. I like D more, but is E okay? If you ever have that feeling, go with your gut of which one is the most simple and straightforward sentence, something that doesn't set off alarm bells, like D. D doesn't set off any alarm bells for me. And a disinclination, many people have a disinclination to recognize the weakness of their analytical skills, messy, while willing, also a very messy transition there, while willing to admit their lack of computer skills. So that's why I would get rid of E. And D has a very nice structure. Okay, so what does that all mean for us? What I want you to take from this question, whether or not, or whether you got it right or wrong, is how to go through the process. So those 4 steps that we talked about are the most important things for me of getting through it. So I'm going to show you just one more slide here of the total process. So we said take a first glance, then you're going to read for meaning, understand the sentence, pick a starting point, and think about like, all right, what can I tackle? If I can tackle this, fine. If I can't tackle this, I should say, find a new starting point. And if I can tackle this, eliminate all the incorrect choices, keep track of your work, and then say like, all right, am I done? If not, find a new starting point again. And then if yes, choose it and move on. That's what I want you to take from this little lesson about sentence correction. All right. So one of the slides I mentioned we're going to see a few times is this slide. How do you move your score from like a decent score to a really high verbal score? It's all about review and understanding. So let's say that you didn't get that question. Like there are things that you can do when you review to make sure that it really sinks in and you get the most out of what you can from the question. A lot of people do this. They say, why is the right answer right? This is something you should do for sure. These are all something you should do. The first 2 are things that most people do. And the second 2 that I'm going to tell you are things that not everyone does. And that's the difference in improving your score. So why is the right answer right? And why are the wrong answers wrong? Those are the things that you should always be asking yourself. But the things that most people don't do, why did the right answer seem wrong? So some of you didn't put the right answer. That's fine. I actually love when people don't put the right answer. It's a chance to learn. So why did you not choose D if you didn't choose it? And I would say like, maybe you didn't cross off that modification in your head. So you didn't notice the subject verb agreement, or I don't know what you did, but you should ask yourself why the right answer seemed wrong. And also, why did the wrong answer seem right? Maybe you liked E because it felt like kind of wordy and brainy and you thought that that's what it's supposed to be. How did the test trick you twice? That's really what this comes down to. Questions 3 and 4 make you realize like the test tricked you twice because it made you choose away from the right answer and choose the wrong answer. So that's what you really want to do. And I highly recommend when you study that you create some sort of error log. So what does that mean? It means that you are tracking your questions, tracking what you got wrong, tracking why you got it wrong, these 4 questions, and then putting a date in for when you're going to come back and look at this question again so that you know the next time that you do it, oh, I remember this question. What did I do? Oh, all right. I missed that modification last time. I'm not going to fall for it this time. And with that type of repetition, you really start to learn like, all right, this is how I'm going to improve. Okay. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to put them in the comments. But we're going to move on to right now. How do we read on this test? So let me give you a second. Actually, I'll read it out loud with you. So pretend your boss asks you to review the past month's worth of press releases from Acme Co. because she has a conference call with Acme to discuss the possibility of selling them some of your company's software. And there's like 15 press releases. Oh, and by the way, the call is in 10 minutes. So what would you do? Well, I think there's no way that you can actually read all of this stuff quickly in 10 minutes and be prepared. So what I want you to think about is how you can read in an efficient manner and still get the information that you need. So If you want to put it in the comments, what would you do? What would you do in this situation? You got 15 press releases to read in 10 minutes. What's the information that you're going to try to get as quickly as possible? Go ahead, put it in the comments. Okay, I'm starting to see comments come in. Thank you for participating. I appreciate that. So, yeah, we have to like skim through the content. So that's what Adarsh, thank you for writing that. It's very close. Excuse me, to what we're going to do. That's what I would do in this situation for sure. On the GMAT, I try not to skim, but I try to get the important information. Oh, so I see some other comments. Yeah. Like, let's try to find the main ideas. Yes, I love that. The main ideas, I think, and that's usually when we say skim, that's what we're looking for. We still have to read everything on the GMAT, but we don't have to pay attention to everything on the GMAT. So getting those core ideas. Yeah, Francois, exactly. Okay. So here's how we do that. How to read on the GMAT. You have 3 goals. First, you're going to ask yourself, what is the basic message? And the way that we can do that is look into where the passage changes direction. I like to say, like, if it ever says many people think, all right, that's telling me a clue. It's telling me what many people think, but at some point, there's going to be a change in direction where we go, but other people think, or but I, the author, think, you know? So these passages are very predictable, and therefore that means that there are clues that we can look for. Changes in direction are one of them in order to get the basic message, the overall context of what we're talking about. In reading comprehension in particular, we're going to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of each paragraph? In critical reasoning, we're going to do something just a little bit different. So that's on here, but we'll talk about it when we get there. And then we're going to ask ourselves, what is the author's conclusion or main point? All right, I'm getting a question about, like, do you read most of the passage for short RCs or less than half for longer? I read it all. I read it all, but I only pay attention to certain things. Because if you don't read it all, you might miss something. That's why I'm not just going to skim, but I'm going to read with a very particular way. So let me talk you through the process, and then we'll do a question. Yeah, a lot of people, Juan, I see your comment. A lot of people have time issues. So that's what we're going to try to get good at. So let's look at the process. This, by the way, is for once we have a question. With reading comp, I like to read the passage first and then look at the question, just so that you know. Some people do it differently. That's how my preference. But we're going to identify the question type, and this goes for both reading comp and critical reasoning. We're going to look at the question. We have to know what it's asking of us. And then we're going to go back to the passage or the argument, depending on what we're working on. And we're going to do a little work. That's what I think of this as. We're going to find the support in the passage, or in critical reasoning, it's called deconstruct the argument. And we'll see that in a second. So that's the work phase. Then this is what I call the think phase. All right. So if you're taking notes, I would write down work for number 2. When you write that stuff down, I would write down think for number 3. So that number 3 is telling us that we're going to articulate an answer or a goal. Basically, we're going to predict. We're going to say, if I were answering this question on my own, this is how I would say it. And then finally, this is when we get to go to the answer choices. And we call it work from wrong to right, meaning if you've predicted your answer, stated your goal, you are going to be able to get rid of wrong answers much easier because they just don't even come close to matching what you predicted. And then you leave in like, oh, I think this is right. You leave it in, but you're going to eliminate first. So that's really what step 4 is saying, is eliminate. And notice that in this process, we don't get to the answers till the 4th step. A lot of times what I see students do is read all the answers and never stop and do the work and the think And that makes it much harder. So if you do have timing issues, that's often what's going on. You're just like jumping into it and you're not helping yourself by doing that. All right, so here's a small critical reasoning. I'm going to give us a little bit of time to do this. So I'm going to give us 2 minutes. I don't think we need it all because this is a short one. So take 2 minutes. I'll be here and let's see what you come up with. Put an answer in the comments when you're ready. All right, I am coming back on because we have some answers coming in. A lot of you are on the right answer. Don't worry if you're not. So let's just talk through this with process, and then we'll do another question. So this one was a simple one to demonstrate process. This was made up by MPrep. You can see at the bottom, I forgot to mention earlier, at the bottom of our slides, we say where we got it from. So this is from Manhattan Prep. Some of them are from the official starter kit. So let's talk through the process here. As we talked about, we're going to ID the question first. So with critical reasoning, you're going to get the argument up top and then the question. Don't read that argument first. Read the question first. So here we're asking about the role of the boldface portion. All right, great. I know what I'm going to do as I'm reading. So then we're going to deconstruct the argument. Now, deconstruct the argument means finding a conclusion and a premise. And I always do it in that order. So the conclusion here, what is the author trying to tell us? Put in the comments, if you will, what is the conclusion of this argument? Conclusion of this argument. What is the author's main point? What is the author trying to get to? And I'll put it on the screen once I start getting some answers in. Yeah, the last line. Okay, yes. The conclusion here is that PB is probably a religious center. Some extra detail, but if I'm writing on this test, I'm not writing it all down. So this is literally what my paper will look like. I'll put on the right-hand side my conclusion, and I will go back and say, what's my premise? Now, a premise is something that supports the conclusion. Why do we think that PB was a religious center? What is the premise? What are we using as evidence? Why do we think that this was a religious center? Very little evidence of luxury goods. that we thought that we would expect to find in a palace. So that's how we deconstruct this argument. That is step 2. Very good. I do this work no matter what on critical reasoning, because that is the only way that I can actually get to the next part. Oops, let me pull up my mouse here, which is step 3, pause and state the goal. The goal said, our goal is to answer the question, what is the bold-faced portion doing? Well, now that we know that it is functioning as a premise to the conclusion. That's what I would say in my head. Okay, oh, all right, I know what this boldface is. And now I'm going to work from wrong to right. So let me clear out my work here. And if we go back to it, we can quickly go through working from wrong to right, because our goal is to say this boldface portion is being used to support the main conclusion of the argument. And so if we go one by one, we can knock off all of them for not being correct, except for E. E is the one that says it provides evidence in support of the main conclusion. Oh my God, that's exactly what we predicted. And so that's how you want to approach critical reasoning. So without further ado, I'm just going to click through a few slides and pull up a question for you. So this is just some example of how you can take notes. You saw how I did it. I break down the conclusion and premise. Some people don't take notes at all. You can do that. Personally, it doesn't work for me, and for most of my students, it doesn't. So here we go. All right, so this is from the GMAT official free starter kit. You can see here. And then go ahead and I'll give you 2 minutes. This one is a real one, so it's a lot longer than what we just did. And put in an answer when you're ready. Okay, I know I'm being mean, but it is 2 minutes. It is 2 minutes, and we're actually a little behind in this presentation. So let's pretend we're behind on the test, because Jaideep was asking, like, what happens if you're behind on the clock? There's a few considerations to take in. Yeah, you might skip it because you look at this and you go, that's a lot of words on the page. It's also a bold-face question, which means I have to do 2 things, right? I have to look at 2 different bold faces and figure those out. So it might be a long question. So yeah, maybe you just guess. Everyone make a guess. And let's talk this one through. Okay, I'm going to get started on talking us through. So let's do the process. we know that the first thing we're going to do is look at the question. As we said, it's boldface. So I do know that it's a little bit long, but I also know for me, I like boldface because they're very strict to me. But they do take a long time. So it's all about what you prefer. We're going to deconstruct the argument. So let's find that conclusion first. Now, this is very wordy. This is a very wordy one. So I'm going to give you a little hint about what to look for. And I'm going to put in, I have a however. Ooh, that's an interesting change to me of which way the thing is going. And I have would almost certainly. Whenever you see something that feels like a little bit like an opinion, that's a good sign that this is your conclusion. So this argument works by starting at first saying like, hey, it's usually true that lawyers who advertise a specific service, they charge less. Okay. And it's also true that when restrictions on advertising go away, more lawyers advertise their services and therefore costs go down. All of that makes sense to me. There's nothing weird in there. Those two sentences go hand in hand. But then we get a however. However, if we get rid of the requirement that these fees, that lawyers must specify fees, then they would almost certainly increase rather than go the predicted way. Ah, that's my conclusion. So what I would write down is exactly that. Conclusion, getting rid of fee, requirement, I should say, requirement to advertise fees would make them go up. And why do we know that? Well, that's the premise that's coming up in the next sentence. Why do we think that this conclusion would happen? Well, if lawyers no longer have an incentive to lower their fees when they're advertising, then they would increase them, right? So if not showing fee on advertising, then they'll increase. That's the reasoning that we're using. So when I go to step 3, which is to pause and state the goal, all right, what did the two portions play? The first portion is just something that I'm like taking as true as background information, right? Like this is what usually happens. Then the second one is not a conclusion. It is being used to support the conclusion that this thing that usually happens is not going to happen in this case. And that's how I think of it. And so now we're ready to work from wrong to right. So let me just clear this out. And I'm going to click through a little bit. Oh, actually, our things are here. So in terms of wrong to right, and I do apologize, we're running a little short on time, so I'm going to talk this through a little faster than I would do it in class. I'm going to just read, and as soon as something's wrong, I'm going to get rid of it. The first is a generalization that the advocate accepts as true. I can go with that. The second is presented as a consequence that follows. Wait, that's the wrong direction. This one is out. Now, a lot of people chose B. Let's see. The first is a pattern of cause and effect. All right, sure. That the consumer advocate argues will be repeated in the case at issue. I would say that is wrong. It's not going to be repeated. It's going to go the other way. That's what we predicted and understood. So B is out. I'm not even going to read the rest of it because I already know when it's wrong. Let's look at C. The first is a pattern of cause and effect, okay, that the consumer advocate predicts will not hold in the case at issue. I like that. The second offers a consideration in support of that prediction, the prediction that it's not gonna hold. Ooh, back and forth, but this is the prediction that is not gonna come true, and that is exactly what we said is happening here. That this second boldface is predicting that opposite supporting that opposite conclusion. And so C is the right answer. Tricky, tricky, tricky. Now, if you got this wrong, remember there's a few things that you're going to do. You're going to put this on your error log. You're going to say, where did I get this from? I'm going to come back to it one day and look at it again. And you're going to ask yourself some questions. By the way, these are, again, just examples of notes you can take because I want to get to this slide. I told you you're going to see it 3 times. Why was the right answer right? Why are the wrong answers wrong? And go a little farther. So if you pick B, which a lot of people did, why did you not pick C? What did you think seemed wrong? And why did you pick B? What did you think seemed right? Maybe you didn't read as deeply as we could have or should have for this question. All right. So let's go straight into reading comprehension. I wanted to say some words first, but I clicked the button. I'm going to give you 3 minutes total to read and do the question. So remember what we talked about at the beginning. Maybe you don't have time to read everything and understand it, but I certainly don't recommend that you just skim and not read some of it. So look for those main ideas. Look for the things that really matter to you. And let's get going. I'll give you 3 minutes and then I'll let you know it's time to put an answer in. All right, it is 3 minutes. Ugh, I know if you're not done, it might feel bad. But remember, it's just a feeling, and this test is about making good decisions. So pretend you're at the end of the test, and it would be better to put in an answer choice than to keep thinking and run out of time. All right, so I have a few different answer choices coming in. And what I'd like to do right now is model for you how I read this, okay? And I'm going to highlight some words as I go along. When I read this, remember we talked about I'm finding main ideas. Main ideas to me are opinions or places things change. And right when I start, I read this until recently and I go, oh, right away. They're going to tell me something that was true until recently. And then they're going to tell me what someone else thinks or something else that came up. And so it says nearly everyone thought of intelligence as a single thing, right? But then, oh, however, Dr. Howard came in, Dr. Howard Gardner, and introduced his theory of multiple intelligences. And then now I know, oh, today there's two major schools of thought. And nobody knows. It says, despite extensive research, they haven't been able to prove one or the other. So right away, I know the main idea of this passage is going to talk to me about these two different theories about intelligence. And so when I read, now I can go a little faster because I don't have to pay as much attention, meaning I'm still going to read it all, but I know paragraph 2 is about the single intelligence model. And it tells us some jargony stuff about positive manifold or simply G. All right, fine, whatever. I don't know what that means, but I'm going to accept it. And then it talks about like, here's some reason in why we think this, like about IQ, where is it? Oh, here it is. Individuals who perform well on tests of one thing also do well on other things. And then another argument. Oh, okay. Here's another argument is about IQ. Sure. And I just kind of read it like that. Sure. This all is in support of single intelligence. Then I get to the next paragraph and I go, oh, okay, now we're going to talk about multiple intelligences. And then I go, all right, so they're talking about some differences here. Like Gardner thinks it's however many, and then someone else, Sternberg, thinks it's however many. And then we get some reasons why they think these things. And there's some examples. But that's how I read it. And no deeper than that, because I know that it's all there for me if I need to come back. But I do have to understand the context, like that last paragraph is about multiple intelligences. So that's how I read. And let me just click through. I make a passage map along the way. Now notice we call this a passage map instead of taking notes, because when you take notes in school, a lot of times what we do is we go, oh, that's important. Let me write that down, because we act like we're going to be tested on it without being able to read it again. So we write it down or we highlight it or we take a lot of notes. But instead, let's just make a map so we know where to go back to, because this passage is going to be here for us when we're answering the question. So we don't need to take extensive notes. So this is one example of what a passage map might look like. Paragraph 1 tells us, hey, there's two theories about intelligence. Paragraph 2 tells us about single intelligences and some other stuff that's in there. And paragraph 3 tells us about multiple intelligences. And then we have Gardner and Sternberg, G and S, like their theories. That's exactly what I would write down, and probably not much more. Because, some people mentioned time. A lot of people are scared to stop and think and write stuff down because of time. But if you actually go slower and stop and think and write stuff down, you'll understand the passage better, which means you'll pick up that time when you're getting to the questions and you won't get confused and have to read back and forth and back and forth. All right. So that's why I would recommend go against your instincts. If you're the type of person who's just like, I'm going to jump in and read it all and I'm going to go really fast and then I'm going to go to the questions, that's not going to help you. So we take a deep breath and pause for a second and write this down after we understand it. Don't write as you're reading. You have to stop and go, what was this about? Okay, I'll write that down. All right, so here we go. The author mentions, so we're looking at a specific type of question. This is what we call a detail question. There are other question types in reading comprehension. This is just an introductory lesson, so I'm not going to go into all the question types. But remember that our first step is to ID the question. So this is a detailed question that is asking us about something that is in the passage, the author mentions, the correlation between IQ and reaction time. And let's pretend those answers aren't there. We would want to predict an answer. Now, I know from my passage map and from reading this that this is in the paragraph about single intelligences. So my prediction would say something like, he mentions that in order to support the theory of single intelligences. All right, that's my prediction. And I'm going to hold on to that as I go through and try to get rid of answer choices. That's my goal now, right? Is work from wrong to right, that it should be close to what I've predicted. All right, so here, A, we have Howard Gardner's theory. No, that's not in the same paragraph. Out. The Robert Sternberg theory, that's not in the same paragraph. Out. Introduce the idea of positive manifold. Well, positive manifold is in there, but that's not really close to what I said. Maybe I'm not sure. Maybe I'll just put like a question mark. By the way, again, I'll write A, B, C, D, E for every verbal question and cross them out so that I'm not just holding this in my head. So I might make a question mark. And then I'll get to D, point out one argument in support of general intelligence. Oh, general intelligence was that single intelligence model, because it says it here right underneath. And it is pointing out one argument in support. Like the support is that these things are related, right? I like that one. Let me just read further just to make sure. Prove that the single intelligence model is superior. All right, so these words are getting a little too harsh for me. I don't think we ever talk about proving anything or that it's superior, because we even said we don't know which one's which, so this one's out. So when I come down to one that I'm questionable and one that I'm like, that's pretty close, that's the one I'm going to choose. So a lot of you ended up on that. We had a variety of answers. C got some people. So I hope you can see that that was like a wrong detail, that positive manifold is in there, but the part that we're talking about is not introducing the idea of positive manifold. We have to be very, very literal on this test. And so if it's not introducing something, then you can't choose that answer. So I hope that helps just give you an understanding of how to approach verbal. I'm going to show you this screen one last time that, let me go through. Remember, why was the right answer right? Why were the wrong answers wrong? But most importantly, how did the test trap you two different ways? What made C seem right? Oh, so for example, you might say it seemed right because it was in the paragraph about positive manifold, but you have to recognize it wasn't the literal part of what was happening there, right? It wasn't introducing the idea. Oh, sorry, I'm answering question 4. Why did the wrong answer seem right? Why did the right answer seem wrong? You might have said, that feels a little general, right? Like, I don't know. It's just like, it didn't say anything about one intelligence. Well, that's okay. A general answer is still fine as long as it is literally true, right? And so for this one, let me just go back. Point out one argument in support of general intelligence that is saying it's just I'm stumbling because it says general intelligence in there, and I'm like, it's a general statement. That's totally fine, right? That it's not saying something specific like the Gardner or Sternberg or blah, 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 positive manifold. It's just saying like, yeah, it's just in support. A lot of times the right answer will seem that way, or will be that way, I should say. So anyways, that's just my last thing that I wanted to say to you. Sorry, I got all stumbled on my words. That those are the things that you should be thinking about as you are error logging and going through your questions. Okay, so we have this free starter kit that you can access on manhattanprep.com. And I think most importantly, what you probably would like to know is that we have a discount code for you for being here today. So please write that down. You can see that it's valid through the whole year till December 31st of 2023 for any of our courses. So you'll get $75 off any GMAT, GRE, or EA complete course. Obviously, I love teaching for Manhattan Prep, and I love our course curriculum. And I also think our students are fantastic. They always come in and participate. So you guys already were doing a great job in the chat. I wish I could actually see you and talk to you and ask more questions, but that's what our classes are like. So I guess I will wrap it up there. If anyone has any last questions, you're more than welcome to put them in the chat. I see the GMAT Club is promoting my acting and directing and writing career. Thanks. Totally a separate thing. But if you want to check me out there, you can do that too. I am teaching a GMAT class right now, and I have a boot camp starting in March. So feel free to find me if you want to take a class with me. Natalie, thank you. And everyone else, thanks so much.